Welcome to the Spring 2023 MPT 150 Introduction to SolidWorks course. I think I'm at the point where after 25 years I've said the same things so many times that I'm losing track of when I said them and how I said them. So I've put together a Jamboard whiteboard of notes to kind of make sure that I'm hitting all of the high points of general information. So mechanical design, drafting, and detailing are 3Ds. Really, mechanical design entails that area in between engineering and the drafting detailing. Drafting being creating the shapes, and the detailing putting the notes, dimensions, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, anything that is related to the documents. So going into SolidWorks, our specs are we're running on Windows 10 or 11. I have a work computer that has Windows 11 on it. I'm noticing minor differences, but it's enough that I'm a little concerned that I've said some things running in Windows 10 that don't work quite the same in Windows 11. So when you encounter those, just understand that I'm still working those out, and I'll try to point out the major minor differences as I can. Processors, i7 processors still running fine. i5, yeah, I'm still seeing a few of those and they're working okay. The 8 gig of RAM is a stretch on the software. 16 gig is preferred. 256 gig is kind of our minimum. Most systems are 500 to a terabyte, so not really much of an issue with space. The onboard and graphics cards will support most of the video. Where you'll see it is if we get into really large assemblies or something more complicated that it has to do a lot of processing. The complete SolidWorks software download is 16 gigabyte, and a basic install is about 8 gig of that. So basic meaning parts, assemblies, drawings, sheet metal, and just kind of the general use items. And once we've done the install, then in the system tray we'll want to look at the SolidWorks Resource Monitor and disable the graphics notifications and the subscription notifications. So let's see if we can find that real quick. I've got a bunch of stuff. So if I right click, then we can dismiss, and dismiss should be checked, and that will save it from popping up every so often saying, I don't like your video card, or there's a new update. All right, you manage those as needed. And again, not sure what goes on with my screen capture when it does that, but it's taking up part of my workspace there. All right, so once we're in SolidWorks, and let's jump over to SolidWorks here real quick. This is the 2023 Service Pack 0, and it's installed on my desktop, so I switch back and forth between the laptop and the desktop, so managing the license is a little different for what I do. When you first start, you'll see the welcome, which is the same as the little home. I'm not super fond of this. I don't really use it, so I will be the one doing do not show on startup. We can go back into the options and turn this back on if we really wanted it, but when you click out of it, you're just in this general waiting for you to do something area. All right, so on the screen navigation, we have the menu bar across the top. Standard toolbar is our new, open, save, print, undo, redo, select, rebuild, the file properties, and the options. All right, and those will ungray out and be a little more visible once we're in a document. Would recommend the pull downs wherever you see a push pin. If you use it more than a couple times, it's go ahead and engage the push pin so it stays active. We have the search, the SolidWorks login, which if you want to create a login, then that will help with switching between computers. the standard help and main one on that one's activate and deactivate licenses if you need to do that. Standard windows, operations, the task pane, general information, our design library, file explorer, the drawing, appearances, and then being able to go through the custom properties to attach to the file properties. Coming back around, I have filters turned on, which is the F5 and to hide this bar, and F6 toggles on and off the last selected. So if I wanted to select for lines or faces and I had that active, I could go back and forth. Status bar is this bar across the bottom, and it will return things that will have useful information, tell us kind of rough coordinates. It will also, if we select something, tell us its length, and if we're editing a sketch, waiting ready to go into a sketch, a underdefined, fully defined condition. So a lot of things come up on the status bar. And right now everything's grayed out because there's no active documents. So once we go into the screen, then we go into a document, create a new, and you should see the default templates. I've created additional template folders over the years. We'll do some of that. Go into a standard part. And a lot of these settings and things will come over from the previous versions. So if you've have a version installed, it will migrate some items, not everything, but quite a few. So on our screen now, these all become active, and again, the standard toolbar, our task pane, our status bar, the filters, and if I just hit F5 real quick, the filters disappear. I like having them up mainly because if either of these little funnels, stack of funnels, is active, then you're only selecting what is highlighted over here. So right now, filtering for, let's see if we highlight these, our standard Windows shows me the short key. If I accidentally hit an X and filter for faces, or an E and hit for edges, then I can glance down here and see that that filter is on, and well, it gives me an indication that I've kind of locked into that item. All right, so if we do the docking, lock and unlock, right now I'm pretty sure that I'm set that I cannot accidentally, oh yeah, and we need to expand that out, and there's a push pin, so the command manager will stay. If I try to drag this, or if you drag this and it becomes disconnected, then this would be where we want to go into the customize and make sure that lock command manager and toolbars is selected. I'm going to deselect it so I can illustrate. Tabs by the tabs to unlock it. So you have to be over here. And if you have a second screen or want to put this somewhere else, then you can drag it to the other corners or to the other edges, not really to the bottom. So most commonplace is at the top. If we go back into customize and then lock, that will just keep it from accidentally disappearing. Or if you hit the little caret and it collapses, then you're just coming back over to the tabs to activate or expand it and contract it. All right, so showing the screens with the command manager expanded, with collapsed, and display tray. So when we dock those, the task pane can also dock and undock in that group. The feature tree sort of, but not really. Anyway, let's go back through the items. Feature tree, work area, the pull down menus, all of our command manager, and then expanding, and if we customize what we're looking at. So command manager is all the way across the top once we're in a document, and this is going to change from part, assembly, drawing, we'll see different things. And sheet metal is included in the part file, so there's nothing really special about having a sheet metal active. Same with weldments. The pull downs, if the pull down is not push pinned, then it will disappear and we have the little side arrow, and if we have enough screen space, then should not be a problem to just leave it, and then when we pick on something it expands out. Let's go back. So we have all of the pull downs. Get back over here. Everything is in our work area. The typical heads up is quick access tools. We can customize those once we know what we want to put on there. And the feature tree is everything over here, which then entails the property manager, which really seamlessly, depending on what we're doing, it goes into the properties and then goes out of the properties without even really doing much with it. But the configurations and display states, take a look at those here in a bit. The DIM expert, at least I think it's still a DIM expert, and then depending on what you have for the tabs, you may see MBD or model-based dimensions, and then the display manager also for appearances. We're going to work with these three almost exclusively, and then we'll get to the others. So feature tree and properties, and it will switch to properties automatically. Again, with the status bar across the bottom, I'm going to have to change that. And we'll go back. And the pull downs, command manager, expand and contract, and the little arrows. Alright, so we have a little arrow over here that will output a little display flyout. And this will have things like the shaded mode of particular solid bodies or transparency, the appearances, selecting for colors, and then we can collapse it back. Same with the command manager. If I pick on any of the tabs in the command manager and then do the push pin, it stays in place. You'll want to probably stay with that in the first part. And then going back to the customize, if right now I have large icons, we can reduce those a little bit. I'll probably have to catch up. And then we have all of the shortcuts, the S key for the parts, the assembly, the drawing, and then the sketching, various commands that we can pull from, the menus, keyboard. So if I wanted to output a list of sheet shortcuts or the Windows shortcuts, we can copy this list and paste it into an Excel worksheet, or I can print the list to PDF or whatever I have available. And then the mouse gestures are realistically called the donuts. I have disabled those on this computer, but when you do a right mouse button and drag, then it comes up with 4, 8, 12, and multiple gestures. So that's evolved a little bit over the last couple years. Not a fan, maybe someday. Alright, so let's go to the next one and the user interface. The view has a lot of information on it, so we do the right mouse button, also do the S key. I just showed the donut. And in context, all of these menus, or the pop-up menus on the right mouse button, change to reflect that you need for the tasks being performed. And same with the S key. Depending on where you're at, you'll get different combinations of options as you're going through the process. So if I right-click and I'm just on the screen, I get one set. If I touch the S key on the keyboard, I get another set. And then we'll probably add more functionality to this by customizing it when we get into it. But if we go back over to the file, edit, view, that's what's available for this this work area for this, and I could go into a sketch that way. We can go to the Sketch tab, which is probably the most common while you are getting started. Please stay away from 3D sketches. If you see anything that says 3D sketch, well, let's not do that right now. So I go into a sketch, or if I right-click, let's see. And not sure why it's not showing up here just yet. And it's not showing up on ASCII. So apparently they haven't added it or haven't worked with it yet. So when we go into a sketch, it asks me for which plane I want to sketch. We have options set to rotate normal to. And then when I right click, I can see a different set of tools for the S key, and then different set of tools for the command manager. All right, so we have display settings and zoom settings. So let's go take a look at those. If I'm in the view and I go to display, these are going to be the same as what we were seeing in the right mouse display grid, and is also the same as shaded, shaded with edges and hidden lines removed. And then our view orientation and zoom. So if we right click, we have box selection, lasso, zoom, pan, and rotate. So the zoom, fit, zoomed area, rotate. Sketch entities, dimensions, which is the same as our smart dimension. And then was still looking for that other shade. So it must have been in the work area outside of the sketch. All right, so display, the settings. These are also going to be available on the heads up. And we did the fit. Probably the most common is to just use the mouse scroll wheel, which I apparently need to add to that. So maybe I'll put a note over here real quick. And the mouse scroll wheel. Is another option. So with the scroll wheel, we don't really have anything on the screen, but if I roll the wheel up or down, it's going to zoom in and out. A lot of times you'll see me zooming that way. So wherever the mouse is at, that's where it's going to zoom at the center. So I will do those. If I do a control, then it goes to pan. If I do the alt, then it rotates about that view, and just holding down the middle mouse button and turning is the full rotate. So let's see if I got to those on the next screen. Oh, there was the control alt plus. Oh yeah, and then also on the keyboard is if I hit alt and rotate, it's rotating about the view, and panning, control and the arrows. And shift is by increments. I don't think I put that one in there. All right, so the view, hide, show, pull down, the view from the pull downs, and the heads up, and the space bar. So a couple of things that we'll want to take a look at is if I hit the space bar, it's going to give us this selection tool that whatever I highlight, that's where we're going to go to as far as orientation. So spacebar. Also, if I hover over any of these, controls 1, 2, 3, 4, the previous view that we were looking at, or creating a new view. And then if I don't want to see the cube, the view selector, I can turn it off, turn it back on. And then we have isometric, dimetric, and trimetric. And then the flyout. Flyout views. Yeah, not. I've seen that one. Haven't played with it apparently. So, back in the view and the modify, the zoom, and then we go to the hide and show. The couple that I would recommend, once we get into the sketching, sketch relations will be on by default. Eventually all those little boxes start to take over. That's my favorite thing to turn off. The rest of them you want to be careful turning on off. And if I want to see the origins, that'll be the little blue origin outside of the sketch. So that one would be good to have on. And then the hide show items is the same thing as what we looked at: sketch relations, origins, those types of things. And if I find I'm changing these enough, then that's where we're going to start talking about putting them in a template. So again, the space bar or the keyboard, then control 1 through 8, my mantra of front, back, left, right, top, bottom, isometric, normal 2, or create a new normal or new named view, depending on what we're doing. A lot of times with the manufacturing software, the CAM software, if I'm not in a normal view, I will create a machined view so I can get back to it quickly. Alright, the options. There is way more in here than we can really try to cover in an intro. But basically, let's go ahead and kick that out. So I'm not in a document. We'll just look at the system settings. Alright, so system options, there'll be another tab for the document options. And under general, we want to input dimension values, maybe. This changed from 2022. It used to be a box down here, so I'm going to have to check on that one when we go back to the 2022 software. And it also had an additional only input or create the dimension if a value was entered. Main one here is the enable confirmation corner. Auto size, the property manager, sometimes I like that. We do want to auto show it. I don't want to have to go back and forth. Sometimes I auto size, most of the time I don't. Let's put it that way. Recent documents displayed in the list can get quite extensive. Nothing really in the model-based dimensions. Drawings, I always kind of question the logic of selecting mark all. Part assembly dimensions for import. Well, you can import all dimensions, and then if all dimensions are marked for import, you really haven't excluded anything from that logic. So I uncheck this, and this is why my dimensions in the sketch will show up as purple. But anything I select, then when I go over to the drawing and say import marked dimensions, only those that I've marked will import, not everything again. So kind of a strange twist there. Nothing really there. So let's go to the colors. And when we get into this, I can't remember exactly which color, but I want to say that I changed that to a much brighter, and we'll see it in the sketches, so that as you're drawing and things get selected, the select item number 1, the blue in the backgrounds doesn't really show up. Pick something there that you may be able to see a little better. And let's see what else. Pretty much, if you want the background, we have light, medium, I think I was at medium. You can pick those as a scheme, use the scene background, specified colors. Be careful with that one because it usually tries to print if the drawing paper color is anything other than white. It will use up a lot of ink. Go to the sketch, check for auto rotate. Uncheck for fully defined sketches. If you want to try fully defined sketches, but it's kind of a pain when it won't let you out unless you fully define it. So, I'm sure there was a use at one time. I've never really used that. What else do we have? The screen. So I don't know if some may have got those out of sequence. The over-defining prompt to set driven state. Oh, enable screen numeric input on entity creation and create dimension only. Okay, so I'm going to have to go back to the input and see which one I was looking at. So this is the create dimension only when a value is entered. That makes the numeric input handy, a little more functional. But in Windows 11, it creates this driven dimension even though. So I'm not sure if that's a bug or something that worked out, but it works in the videos for for Windows 11 with 2022. But then let's see, how do I say that? It doesn't work the same way in 11 as it does in Windows 10. So we'll leave it at that before go on. Let's see, nothing really display. Really, a lot of these are only if you're having issues. External references, default templates. We want a prompt to select a document template rather than just the defaults. Notice that this is now going back for my defaults to 2017. So I'd either need to update those or just let it have it prompt me, and I'm not sure what's being pointed to at 2017. So my default templates, the 2020 templates, usually I just update these on a working system, meaning I do most of my design. I will have one that just stays consistent, but I like to go through the process of creating these. So I end up with one for each version for these videos. For the feature manager, I'll turn automatic. What all did we do? The solid bodies, I like to have those shown, even if I'm not using them. It's a way of keeping track, keeping it in the forefront. Show the annotations. Pretty much, I think the sensors and the history are on automatically. I changed that one to automatic if one shows up, and to hide the history. If you want to use those, leave them on. But most of those are going to stay in the automatic or as needed. Oh, jumped over file locations. So when we talk about file locations, document templates is one. The custom property files is another one, possibly the design library, the sheet formats, and symbol library are items that we would be interested in if we need to change or modify those. Some of these are going to take multiple items and have different locations that it can search for or reference to. Others are only going to allow one. So we did the feature manager, spin increments if we do the arrows on the keyboard, the view, the all-important reverse mouse wheel zoom direction. So if you're used to Autodesk products, the mouse wheel will zoom and do one thing, and in Solidworks, of course, it has to do the opposite. So this will make them act the same. Backup and recovery if you want to have those. Auto recover information. SolidWorks has been really stable. I can only crash SolidWorks maybe once every couple months. So, and usually it has to be something really strange that I'm trying. So if you're having issues, save the auto recovery information every 10 minutes and make sure that you put it in a location like My Documents, create a folder in My Documents, or someplace that won't be completely lost forever. If you have a touch screen, Old Wizard, File Explorer, searching the collaboration, if you're doing multi-user, there's some useful there. Messages, errors, warnings, and then the messages and import. You'll have to try. I'm not a fan of the enable 3D interconnect because on the CAM side, I usually rather have an imported solid. The interconnect referencing back to the original step, the original Inventor, NX, Fusion file. Any of the translations can create problems. If it's just imported, it creates a dumb solid that can be modified and adjusted as needed. And the advantage of the interconnect, though, is if the step file is overwritten, then it will see that it's updated and it will change the geometry as it goes. And then if we want to export settings for all of the different translation files. Go ahead and hit OK there. And if it asks for an elevation, anything that we've changed in the like the document templates, it may ask to elevate the Windows system permissions. So, and then if it asks for an admin and password, a lot of times you can just hit OK, and it's doing it for that user, not necessarily systems across the computer. All right, so the gear and the arrows shows the options, customize add-ins. We'll want to look at the add-ins. So if I do just the gear or just the options, that will take us into the properties, or the options for the system. The add-ins have things based on the levels. So a basic level will only have a few things. The professional level has the professional add-ins, and the premium level will have a little bit more in the way of simulation. And then the other add-ins are things that I've installed. So the Solidworks cam, the HSM master cam, and don't see the solid cam, but probably work into that one eventually. All right, so typically everything in here will be checked off as active, and then checked off for startup. 3D control is my 3D mouse, but really I want SolidWorks to start as fast as possible, and if I need those things, then I'll turn them on. All right, so templates are going to be something. Why don't we go ahead and pause the video here, and we'll pick up the templates and the next section.